Marcus wiped down the bar counter for the third time that evening, his eyes occasionally drifting toward the corner table where the company's annual celebration was winding down. As the night manager of the Golden Oak, an upscale restaurant downtown, he had seen countless corporate parties come and go. But tonight felt different somehow. The woman sitting at the head table commanded attention without trying. Sarah Chen, CEO of Tech Vision Industries, had arrived earlier that evening with her executive team. Marcus recognized her from the business magazines that customers sometimes left behind. In person, she seemed more human than her polished corporate photos suggested. She laughed genuinely at her colleagues' jokes and listened intently when others spoke. Marcus had been working at the Golden Oak for 2 years, ever since he dropped out of his MBA program. The decision still haunted him some nights. His parents, both teachers, had saved every penny to help him pursue his dream of becoming a business consultant. But when his father suffered a heart attack during Marcus's second semester, everything changed. The medical bills, the mortgage payments, and his mother's reduced hours at work meant Marcus had to choose between his future and his family's immediate needs. The choice was never really a choice at all. Now at 28, Marcus found himself serving drinks to people who lived the life he once imagined for himself. He tried not to think about it too much, focusing instead on doing his job well and taking care of his parents. His father was recovering slowly and his mother had started painting again, something that brought Marcus more joy than any business degree could have. As the evening progressed, Marcus noticed that most of the party guests had left. Only Sarah and 2 of her executives remained, deep in conversation about some merger deal. Marcus couldn't help but overhear bits and pieces as he cleaned nearby tables. Sarah spoke with the kind of confidence that came from years of making tough decisions. Her words were measured but passionate when she talked about protecting jobs during the merger. Around midnight, the 2 executives finally called it a night. Sarah remained alone at the table, staring at her phone with a worried expression. Marcus approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, Miss Chen? We'll be closing in about 30 minutes. Can I get you anything else?" She looked up and Marcus noticed her eyes were slightly glassy from the wine. Not drunk, but definitely not sober either. "Actually, I think I need to call a cab. My driver went home hours ago, and I seem to have had more wine than I intended." Marcus glanced at his watch. "It might take a while to get a cab at this hour, especially on a Friday night. The downtown area gets pretty busy." Sarah sighed and rubbed her temples. "I have an important presentation tomorrow morning. Well, this morning. Now I suppose I really need to get home and get some sleep." Something about her tone, a mix of vulnerability and determination, reminded Marcus of his mother during those difficult months after his father's heart attack. Before he could second-guess himself, he heard his own voice saying, "I could drive you home if you'd like. I'm finishing up here anyway." Sarah looked surprised. "That's very kind of you, but I couldn't impose like that." "It's no imposition at all," Marcus insisted. "I have a reliable car, and honestly, I'd feel better knowing you got home safely rather than waiting around for a cab that might not show up." After a moment's hesitation, Sarah nodded. "If you're sure it's no trouble, I live in Riverside Heights." Marcus knew the area well. It was about a 20-minute drive from downtown in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. As he finished his closing duties, he wondered what had possessed him to make such an offer to someone he'd never met before. Maybe it was the genuine way she had treated the restaurant staff throughout the evening, or perhaps it was simply the right thing to do. 20 minutes later, Marcus was helping Sarah into his modest Honda Civic. The contrast between his practical car and her usual luxury transportation wasn't lost on either of them, but Sarah settled into the passenger seat without any sign of judgment. "I'm Marcus, by the way," he said as they pulled out of the restaurant's parking lot. "Sarah, and thank you again for this. You really didn't have to." As they drove through the quiet city streets, an easy conversation developed between them. Sarah asked about his work at the restaurant, and Marcus found himself sharing more than he had intended. He told her about his father's health scare and his decision to leave school. Sarah listened without offering the usual platitudes or unsolicited advice. "That must have been an incredibly difficult decision," she said quietly. "It was," Marcus admitted. "But family comes first, you know. I figured there would always be time for school later." but there might not be another chance to help my parents when they really needed me. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Not everyone would see it that way. Most people your age would have found reasons to justify putting their own goals first. Marcus glanced at her. What would you have done? Honestly, at your age, I probably would have convinced myself that finishing school was the best way to help them in the long run. I was pretty good at rationalizing selfish decisions back then. They talked about growing up with immigrant parents, about the pressure to succeed, and about the weight of family expectations. Marcus learned that Sarah's parents had run a small grocery store, working 16-hour days to send her to college. She had been the first in her family to graduate from university, let alone build a successful business. Sometimes I wonder if they understand what I actually do now, Sarah said with a laugh. My mother still introduces me as my daughter who works with computers. Marcus laughed too. My dad tells everyone I'm in the hospitality industry, which technically isn't wrong. As they turned into Sarah's neighborhood, Marcus was struck by the size of the houses. Each one sat on what looked like several acres, with perfectly manicured lawns and circular driveways. He had delivered catering orders to this area before, but always through service entrances. Sarah directed him to a modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows and clean architectural lines. Even in the darkness, Marcus could see it was beautiful. This is me, Sarah said as Marcus pulled into the circular driveway. She gathered her purse and turned to him. Marcus, I can't thank you enough for this. You've been incredibly kind. It was my pleasure, Marcus replied honestly. Drive safely tomorrow and good luck with your presentation. Sarah paused with her hand on the door handle. You know, we should exchange numbers. I'd like to send you something to thank you properly. Marcus felt slightly embarrassed. That's really not necessary. Please, Sarah insisted. It would make me feel better. They exchanged contact information and Marcus waited until Sarah was safely inside her house before driving away. As he made his way home to his small apartment across town, he reflected on the evening's unexpected turn. There had been something refreshing about talking to someone who seemed genuinely interested in hearing his story without judgment. He had no idea that their conversation had affected Sarah just as deeply, or that her words the next morning would change the entire trajectory of his life. Marcus woke up the next morning to his phone buzzing insistently on his nightstand. Squinting at the screen, he saw an unknown number calling. For a moment, he considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. Hello? Marcus, this is Sarah Chen. I hope I'm not waking you up. Marcus sat up quickly, suddenly fully alert. Ms. Chen, no, not at all. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I wanted to call and thank you again for last night, but more than that, I've been thinking about our conversation and I have a proposition for you. Marcus rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was still dreaming. A proposition? I'd like to offer you a job, a real job, not just a thank you gesture. Are you free this afternoon? I'd love to discuss it in person if you're interested. Marcus's mind raced. He had been expecting maybe a gift card or a nice tip, not a job offer from one of the city's most successful CEOs. Yes, I'm interested. But Ms. Chen, you don't really know anything about my qualifications. I know more than you think, Sarah replied. Our conversation last night told me everything I need to know about your character. And frankly, character is harder to teach than skills. Can you meet me at my office at 2 o'clock? After hanging up, Marcus stared at his phone in disbelief. He called his mother to tell her about the strange turn of events, and she immediately started worrying that it might be some kind of scam. Honey, be careful, she said. Rich people don't just offer jobs to strangers. Maybe she was more drunk than you thought. But something in Sarah's voice had sounded completely sober and serious. Marcus decided to trust his instincts and agreed to meet her. Tech Vision Industries occupied 3 floors of a sleek glass building downtown. Marcus had walked past it countless times on his way to work, never imagining he would one day be inside. The lobby was all polished marble and modern art, with a reception desk that looked like something from a science fiction movie. The receptionist called upstairs to announce his arrival, and within minutes, a young woman in a crisp business suit came down to escort him to the executive floor. Marcus felt underdressed in his khakis and button-down shirt, the nicest clothes he owned outside of his restaurant uniform. Sarah's office was impressive, but not intimidating. Large windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the furniture was modern but comfortable. Sarah stood up from behind her desk when he entered, wearing a navy blazer and looking every inch the successful executive he had seen in magazine photos. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Please sit down." She gestured to a seating area with 2 chairs and a small table. "Can I get you some coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be great, thank you." As Sarah poured coffee from a machine that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month, she began to explain her offer. "I've been thinking about what you told me last night about leaving school to help your family. It takes a special kind of person to make that sacrifice, and it tells me you understand responsibility and loyalty in a way that many people don't." Marcus sipped his coffee, which was indeed the best he had ever tasted. "I appreciate that, but I still don't understand what kind of job you're offering." Sarah sat down across from him. "I need an executive assistant, someone I can trust completely, who can handle sensitive information and complex situations with discretion. The position pays $75,000 a year to start, with full benefits and opportunities for advancement." Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. $75,000 was more than twice what he made at the restaurant. "Ms. Chen, that's incredibly generous, but I don't have any experience in corporate environments. Experience can be gained. Integrity cannot be taught." Sarah leaned forward slightly. "Let me tell you what happened after you dropped me off last night. I went to bed thinking about our conversation, about the choice you made to put your family first. This morning I had that presentation I mentioned. It was about the merger we've been working on, and there was a moment when I had to decide between what would be most profitable and what would be right for our employees' families." She paused, looking out the window for a moment before continuing. "Your story reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Not just to make money, but to create something that would make a positive difference in people's lives. I chose to structure the merger in a way that protects jobs, even though it will cost us more in the short term." Marcus was beginning to understand. "So this job offer isn't charity?" "Absolutely not. I need someone around me who has their priorities straight, someone who reminds me what's really important. You demonstrated last night that you're exactly that kind of person." Sarah smiled. "Besides, you'd be surprised how many MBAs I've hired who couldn't handle the pressure, or who were only interested in advancing their own careers." The offer felt too good to be true, but Marcus could see that Sarah was completely serious. "What would my responsibilities be?" "You'd manage my calendar, handle correspondence, coordinate with department heads, and help me prepare for meetings and presentations. You'd also travel with me occasionally for business trips. It's demanding work, but I believe you can handle it." Marcus thought about his parents, about the stress they had been under trying to make ends meet. This job would not only take that pressure away, but allow him to start saving money to eventually return to school. "There is one condition," Sarah added. "I'd want you to complete your MBA while working here. The company will pay for it, and I'll make sure your schedule allows time for classes. Education is too important to abandon permanently." Now Marcus was certain he was dreaming. "Ms. Chen, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she replied with a grin. "But think about it over the weekend if you need to. This is a big decision." Marcus looked around the office, then back at Sarah. In less than 24 hours, his entire world had shifted. Yesterday morning, he had been a restaurant worker with no clear path forward. Now he was being offered a chance to completely change his life. "I don't need the weekend," he said. "Yes, I accept." Sarah's smile was genuine and warm. "Excellent. Can you start Monday morning? I know that doesn't give you much time to transition from your current job. The restaurant will understand. They're good people." Marcus paused. "Ms. Chen, can I ask you something? Why me? You could have anyone for this position." Sarah considered the question carefully. "Last night, you saw someone who needed help, and you helped without expecting anything in return. In my experience, that's rare. Most people help others because they want something back or because it makes them feel good about themselves. You helped because it was the right thing to do." She stood up and walked to her desk, returning with a business card. This has my direct number. Use it if you need anything between now and Monday. And Marcus? Welcome to Tech Vision. As Marcus left the building, he felt like he was floating. He called his parents from the parking lot, and his mother cried when he told her about the salary and benefits. His father, always the practical one, wanted to know about the company's stability and growth prospects. "It sounds too good to be true, son," his father said, "but sometimes life surprises us in good ways too." That evening, Marcus worked his last shift at the Golden Oak. His manager and co-workers were happy for him but also sad to see him go. He had been a reliable presence in their lives, always willing to cover extra shifts or help out when things got busy. "You better not forget us little people when you're running some big corporation," his friend Jake joked as they closed up together. Marcus laughed, but privately he wondered if that was even possible. Would success change him the way it seemed to change other people? He thought about Sarah's words regarding staying grounded and remembered his father's values about treating everyone with respect regardless of their position. As he drove home that night, Marcus passed by Sarah's neighborhood. He could see lights on in her house and wondered what she was doing. Planning for Monday probably, or working on another presentation that could affect hundreds of families. Tomorrow, he would be part of that world. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. He had gone from serving drinks to corporate executives to potentially becoming one himself. The responsibility felt enormous, but so did the opportunity. Marcus had no way of knowing that Sarah was indeed still awake, reviewing his resume and planning his training program. She had taken bigger risks in business, but something about this decision felt particularly important. She sensed that Marcus could become far more than just an assistant, and she was already thinking about ways to prepare him for greater responsibilities. Both of them fell asleep that night with their lives forever changed by a simple act of kindness and the conversation that followed. Monday morning arrived faster than Marcus had expected. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror at 6 a.m., adjusting his tie for the 10th time. He had spent Sunday shopping for appropriate work clothes, guided by his mother's practical advice and a helpful salesperson at the department store. The navy suit, white dress shirts, and conservative ties represented a significant investment, but he knew first impressions mattered. Marcus arrived at Tech Vision 30 minutes early, partly from nervousness and partly from wanting to make a good impression. The building looked different in the daylight, more imposing somehow. The morning rush of employees streaming in and out made him realize he was about to become part of something much larger than himself. Sarah was already in her office when he arrived, despite it being only 7:30. She looked up from her computer with a smile when the receptionist brought him up. "Perfect timing," she said, standing to greet him. "I have about 20 minutes before my first meeting. Let me show you your workspace and walk you through what today looks like." Marcus's desk was positioned just outside Sarah's office in a space that clearly commanded respect. It was equipped with a high-end computer, multiple monitors, and a phone system that looked more complex than anything he had ever used. Sarah explained the basic functions while handing him a thick folder. "This contains information about all our current projects, key personnel, and company policies. Don't feel like you need to memorize it all today, but start getting familiar with it." She pointed to different sections as she spoke. "Here's the organizational chart. Here are the department heads you'll be working with most often, and this section covers the protocols for scheduling and correspondence." The next few hours were a whirlwind of introductions and information. Sarah took him to meet the department heads, each of whom seemed curious but welcoming. Marcus noticed how Sarah introduced him not just as her assistant, but as someone who would be representing her in various capacities. "Marcus will often be your first point of contact for scheduling meetings with me or coordinating projects that cross departmental lines," she explained to the head of marketing. "Please treat his requests with the same priority you would give to mine." By lunchtime, Marcus's head was spinning with names, procedures, and responsibilities. Sarah suggested they eat in her office so she could continue orienting him to the company. "How are you feeling so far?" she asked as they shared Chinese takeout from containers that cost more than most restaurant meals. "Overwhelmed, but in a good way," Marcus replied honestly. "Everyone has been very welcoming. I was worried people might resent someone being brought in from outside. The fact that you're concerned about that tells me you'll do fine, Sarah said. Some people might have assumptions about how you got this job, but your work will speak for itself soon enough. That afternoon, Sarah had him sit in on a board meeting as an observer. Marcus tried to follow the discussion about quarterly projections and market expansion, but much of it went over his head. What struck him was how Sarah commanded the room without dominating it. She asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully to others' input, and made decisions with confidence when needed. After the meeting, as they walked back to her office, Sarah asked what he had observed. "You never had to raise your voice or assert your authority," Marcus said. "People listen to you because they respect you, not because they're afraid of you." Sarah smiled. "That's exactly right. Authority that comes from fear is fragile. Respect is much more powerful and longer lasting." The rest of the week flew by in a blur of learning and adjustment. Marcus made mistakes, of course. He scheduled a conference call at the wrong time, mixed up the names of 2 important clients, and accidentally deleted an important email. But Sarah was patient with his errors and always took time to explain not just what he had done wrong, but why it mattered. "Mistakes are learning opportunities," she told him after he had to reschedule an entire day's worth of meetings due to a calendar mix-up. "The key is not to repeat the same mistake twice." By Friday, Marcus was beginning to feel more confident. He had successfully coordinated a complex meeting between 3 different departments, handled several phone calls from potential investors, and even drafted a response to a client inquiry that Sarah approved with only minor edits. "You're learning faster than I expected," Sarah told him as they reviewed the week's accomplishments. "I think you're ready for some additional responsibilities." She explained that Tech Vision was in the early stages of acquiring a smaller tech company, and she wanted Marcus to help coordinate the due diligence process. It would involve working with lawyers, accountants, and executives from both companies to ensure all the necessary information was gathered and analyzed. "This is the kind of project that could really accelerate your learning," Sarah said. "You'll see how major business decisions are made from the inside. Are you interested?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." That evening, Marcus called his parents to update them on his first week. His father sounded proud but cautious. "It sounds like she's giving you a lot of responsibility very quickly," his father observed. "That's either a sign that she has great confidence in you or that she's testing you to see how you handle pressure." "Maybe both," Marcus replied. "But either way, I'm going to prove that her faith in me is justified." His mother had different concerns. "Are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating properly? You sound tired." Marcus realized he had been so focused on impressing Sarah and learning his new role that he had barely thought about anything else. He had been staying late every night, reviewing files and preparing for the next day. His small apartment felt strange to him now, like he was visiting someone else's life. The weekend provided a much-needed break to process everything that had happened. Marcus spent Saturday with his parents, helping his father with some yard work and enjoying his mother's cooking. It felt good to do something physical after a week of mental intensity. "You seem different," his mother observed as they sat on the back porch after dinner. "More confident, maybe." "I feel different," Marcus admitted. "A week ago, I thought my life was pretty much set. Now I feel like anything is possible." His father joined them with 3 cups of coffee. "Just remember where you came from, son. Success can change people if they're not careful." Marcus thought about Sarah and how she had maintained her values despite her success. "I think I have a good role model for how to handle it." Sunday evening, as Marcus prepared for his second week, he received a text from Sarah. "Great work this week. Looking forward to seeing what you accomplish next week." The message was simple, but it meant everything to Marcus. For the first time since leaving school, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Monday morning brought new challenges and new opportunities. The acquisition project Sarah had mentioned turned out to be even more complex than she had indicated. Marcus found himself coordinating conference calls with legal teams in 3 different states, organizing due diligence documents, and serving as a liaison between various parties. The work was demanding and sometimes stressful, but Marcus discovered he had a talent for seeing the big picture while managing countless small details. He created systems for tracking the progress of different aspects of the acquisition, and his organizational skills impressed everyone involved. "Your assistant is remarkably capable," the lead attorney told Sarah during one meeting. "He seems to understand the implications of these transactions better than some business school graduates I've worked with." After the attorney left, Sarah turned to Marcus with a pleased expression. High praise from someone who's not easily impressed. "I just try to understand why we're doing each step, not just how to do it," Marcus replied. "It makes everything make more sense." "Exactly," Sarah said. "That's the difference between someone who follows instructions and someone who thinks strategically. You're definitely in the second category." As the weeks passed, Marcus began to see that his role was evolving beyond traditional executive assistant duties. Sarah was including him in strategic discussions, asking for his opinions on various business matters, and giving him increasingly complex projects to manage. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. Marcus was becoming not just Sarah's assistant, but her trusted advisor and collaborator, and both of them were beginning to realize that this partnership could take them places neither had imagined when they first met in that restaurant just a few weeks earlier. 3 months into his new role, Marcus faced his first major crisis at TechVision. He arrived at the office on a Wednesday morning to find Sarah pacing in her office, phone pressed to her ear, her usually calm demeanor replaced by visible stress. "I understand the timeline is critical," she was saying, "but we need to ensure we're making the right decision, not just the fast one." Marcus quickly checked his email and found dozens of urgent messages. The acquisition deal they had been working on was falling apart. The target company had discovered a potential legal issue with one of TechVision's subsidiaries, and they were threatening to walk away from the deal entirely. When Sarah finished her call, she turned to Marcus with an expression he had never seen before. For the first time since he had known her, she looked uncertain. "We have a serious problem," she said, quickly briefing him on the situation. "If this deal falls through, we could lose the $20 million we've already invested in the process. Worse, it could damage our reputation in the industry." Marcus listened carefully, his mind already working through the implications. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to coordinate a crisis response. We have meetings scheduled with our legal team, our board of directors, and the executives from the target company. Everything needs to happen today, and it all needs to be perfect." The next 12 hours tested every skill Marcus had developed since joining TechVision. He coordinated conference calls across multiple time zones, prepared briefing documents, and served as a communications hub for various teams working on different aspects of the crisis. At one point, he found himself on a 3-way call with lawyers in New York and San Francisco, translating technical legal concepts for the business team, while simultaneously taking notes for Sarah's presentation to the board. "Marcus," Sarah said during a brief break between meetings, "I need you to know how much I appreciate what you're doing today. You're handling this pressure better than executives with 20 years of experience." "I learned from the best," Marcus replied, then immediately felt embarrassed by how that sounded. Sarah smiled for the first time all day. "That's kind of you to say, but what you're doing today is all you. I can teach process and strategy, but I can't teach someone to stay calm under pressure or to think clearly when everything is falling apart." By evening, they had managed to salvage the deal. The legal issue turned out to be resolvable, and Marcus's careful coordination had ensured that all parties had the information they needed to move forward. As the last meeting ended and the office grew quiet, Sarah collapsed into her chair with visible relief. "We did it," she said. "I honestly wasn't sure we were going to pull this off." Marcus was exhausted but exhilarated. He had never experienced anything like the intensity of the past day, and he was surprised to discover that he had thrived under the pressure rather than wilting. "What happens next?" he asked. "Next, we close the deal and add 60 new employees to our company," Sarah replied. "And next week you and I are going to have a conversation about your future here." That conversation came sooner than expected. The following morning, Sarah called Marcus into her office before he had even finished his coffee. "Sit down," she said, but her tone was warm rather than ominous. "Yesterday proved something I've been suspecting for a while. You're ready for more responsibility, and frankly, this company needs what you have to offer." She explained that TechVision was planning to expand into new markets, which would require someone to oversee business development in several key areas. The role would involve travel, client relations, and significant decision-making authority. "I want to offer you the position of Director of Business Development," Sarah said. "It comes with a substantial salary increase, equity in the company, and the opportunity to shape TechVision's future growth." Marcus felt the familiar sensation of his world shifting beneath his feet. "Director? But I've only been here 3 months. And in those 3 months you've demonstrated better judgment and more natural leadership ability than people I've worked with for years," Sarah replied. "Besides, some of our best innovations have come from people who weren't constrained by conventional thinking about how things should be done." The promotion would mean Marcus was no longer just Sarah's assistant but a peer among the company's leadership team. It was both exciting and terrifying. "There is one thing I want you to consider carefully," Sarah continued. "This role will require travel about 50% of the time. That might impact your ability to help your parents as much as you've been doing." Marcus had indeed been using his increased income to help his parents significantly. His father's medical bills were finally paid off. His mother had been able to reduce her work hours, and Marcus had even started a college fund for his younger cousin. The thought of being away from home more often was concerning. "Can I think about it over the weekend?" he asked. "Of course, take all the time you need." That evening, Marcus had dinner with his parents and explained the opportunity. His mother's first reaction was worry about him traveling so much, but his father had a different perspective. "Son, when I had my heart attack, you gave up your dreams to take care of us. We've never forgotten that sacrifice," his father said. "But now we're stable, and it's time for you to chase your dreams again." His mother nodded, though Marcus could see the concern in her eyes. "Your father's right. We didn't raise you to play it safe forever. We raised you to make a difference in the world." That weekend, Marcus found himself walking through his old college campus. The MBA program he had left behind seemed like a lifetime ago, but the dreams that had driven him there were still alive. The difference was that now he had real-world experience to complement his academic ambitions. He thought about Sarah's journey from her parents' grocery store to running a major corporation. She had taken risks, made difficult decisions, and never lost sight of her values. Marcus realized that accepting this promotion wasn't just about advancing his career. It was about honoring the faith that Sarah had placed in him and the sacrifices his parents had made. Monday morning, Marcus knocked on Sarah's office door with his decision. "I accept," he said simply. Sarah's smile was radiant. "Excellent. Your first assignment is to accompany me to Seattle next week. We're meeting with a potential client who could become our largest account." As they discussed the details of the trip and his new responsibilities, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since that night he drove Sarah home. He had gone from serving drinks to making strategic business decisions, from worrying about his family's finances to helping shape a company's future. But perhaps the most significant change was in how he saw himself. No longer was he someone whose dreams had been derailed by circumstances. He was someone who had learned to create new dreams and work steadily toward achieving them. The week before the Seattle trip, Marcus threw himself into preparing for his new role. He read industry reports, studied potential clients, and worked with various department heads to understand how business development fit into TechVision's overall strategy. Sarah scheduled several preparation sessions with him, treating him as a true partner in the upcoming presentation, rather than just an assistant along for the ride. "Remember," she told him during one of these sessions, "they're not just evaluating our company's capabilities. They're evaluating whether they trust us as partners. Your job is to demonstrate that we understand their needs and can deliver results." The Seattle meeting would be Marcus's first test in his new role, but he felt ready. He had learned more about business in 4 months at TechVision than he had in 2 semesters of graduate school. More importantly, he had learned it by doing, not just by reading textbooks. As their flight took off for Seattle the following Monday, Marcus looked down at the city shrinking below them. Somewhere down there was the Golden Oak restaurant, where he had been working just 4 months earlier. The distance between that life and this one seemed impossible to measure. Sarah, working on her laptop in the seat beside him, looked up and followed his gaze out the window. "Any regrets?" she asked. Marcus considered the question seriously before answering. "None at all, but it's still hard to believe this is real sometimes." "It's real," Sarah said with a smile. "And this is just the beginning." The Seattle meeting exceeded all expectations. Marcus found himself naturally connecting with the potential client, a technology company looking to expand their operations across the West Coast. His background in hospitality, which he had initially worried might seem irrelevant, actually proved invaluable. He understood customer service at a fundamental level that impressed the executives they were pitching to. "You really get it," the client's CEO told Marcus during a break in negotiations. "Most consultants talk about customer experience like it's a checkbox to mark off. You understand it's the foundation of everything else." When they returned to their hotel that evening, Sarah was practically glowing with satisfaction. "That was masterful," she told Marcus over dinner. "You didn't just support the presentation, you elevated it. I just tried to listen to what they were really asking for," Marcus replied, still somewhat amazed by how naturally the meeting had flowed. "Exactly. And that's a skill that can't be taught in business school." Sarah paused, seeming to consider something carefully. "Marcus, I want to share something with you. When I started this company 10 years ago, I had a vision of building something different. Not just another tech company focused solely on profits, but an organization that could create real value for people's lives." She looked out the restaurant window at the Seattle skyline. "Somewhere along the way, I got caught up in the mechanics of running a business. Quarterly reports, board meetings, investor presentations. I never lost sight of my values, but I sometimes lost touch with why those values mattered." Marcus waited, sensing she had more to say. "That night you drove me home, listening to you talk about choosing family over personal ambition. It reminded me of something I had forgotten. Success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about who you remain while achieving it." Sarah turned back to him. "Working with you these past months has been like having a compass that always points toward what's actually important." The conversation stayed with Marcus long after they returned home. Over the following weeks, as he settled into his new role, he began to understand what Sarah meant. The business world was full of talented people who had somehow lost their way, making decisions based on spreadsheets rather than principles. His first major solo project involved negotiating a partnership with a company in Austin. The numbers looked good on paper, but something about the company's leadership bothered Marcus. They spoke about their employees as costs to be managed rather than people to be valued. When Marcus shared his concerns with Sarah, she listened carefully to his observations. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked. "That this partnership would be profitable in the short term but damaging to our reputation in the long term," Marcus replied honestly. "Then we don't do it," Sarah said without hesitation. "Trust your instincts. They've been right so far." The decision to walk away from the Austin deal proved wise when that company was later investigated for labor violations. Marcus's judgment had saved TechVision from a potentially damaging association. Word of Marcus's success began to spread throughout the industry. He started receiving calls from headhunters offering positions at other companies, some with significantly higher salaries than what he was making at TechVision. "You're becoming quite the hot commodity," Sarah observed after Marcus mentioned the latest offer he had received. "Are you tempted?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "The money is tempting," he admitted, "but I can't imagine working anywhere else. This feels like home." Sarah smiled. "Good, because I have another proposal for you." She explained that TechVision was planning to open a West Coast office, and she wanted Marcus to head the operation. It would mean relocating to San Francisco, building a team from scratch, and essentially running an independent division of the company. "It's a huge responsibility," Sarah acknowledged. "You'd be reporting directly to the board, with full authority over hiring, budgeting, and strategic decisions for the West Coast market. The offer was both thrilling and overwhelming. Marcus would essentially be running his own company, with the security and resources of TechVision behind him. "What about my family?" he asked. "My parents are just getting back on their feet." "We'd provide relocation assistance for them if they want to move, or you could fly back frequently," Sarah replied. "But Marcus, opportunities like this don't come along often. You're ready for this challenge." That evening, Marcus had a long conversation with his parents about the San Francisco opportunity. His mother was excited about the possibility of living near the ocean, while his father was characteristically practical about the logistics. "It sounds like exactly the kind of opportunity we hoped you'd have when you first started college," his father said. "The path was different than we expected, but the destination is better than we ever imagined." 2 weeks later, Marcus accepted the position. The announcement at TechVision created quite a buzz. Many employees were amazed that someone who had been with the company for less than a year was being given such significant responsibility. "Some people think Sarah's taking a big risk on you," his colleague Jennifer mentioned during his farewell lunch. "She is," Marcus replied. "But she believed in me before I believed in myself. Now I have to prove that her faith was justified." The farewell party that TechVision threw for Marcus was unlike anything he had expected. Colleagues shared stories about how he had helped them with various projects, and several mentioned that his approach to problem-solving had influenced their own work. Sarah's farewell speech was particularly moving. "Marcus came to us through the most unlikely circumstances," she said to the assembled group. "But sometimes the best things in life happen when we're least expecting them. He's taught all of us that character matters more than credentials, and that success without integrity is just failure with better marketing." As Marcus prepared for the move to San Francisco, he reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this point. A year ago, he had been a college dropout working in a restaurant, worried about his family's finances, and uncertain about his future. Now he was preparing to run a major business operation in one of the world's most competitive markets. The transformation seemed impossible, but it had happened one decision at a time, one challenge at a time. The night before he left for San Francisco, Marcus drove past the Golden Oak restaurant where his journey had begun. The building looked the same, but everything else had changed. He was no longer the uncertain young man who had offered to drive a stranger home. He was a business leader with real responsibility and unlimited potential. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Remember, you're not just representing TechVision in San Francisco. You're representing the idea that anything is possible when talent meets opportunity. Make us proud." Marcus smiled as he read the message. He had no doubt that the challenges ahead would be significant, but he also knew he was ready for them. Sarah had given him more than just a job. She had given him the confidence to become the person he was meant to be. As he packed the last of his belongings, Marcus found the business card Sarah had given him on that first day. On the back, she had written, "Character plus opportunity, unlimited. Potential." Tomorrow he would begin proving that equation true on an even larger scale. 6 months after moving to San Francisco, Marcus stood in the conference room of TechVision West, looking out at the Golden Gate Bridge through floor-to-ceiling windows. The office space was everything he had envisioned when planning the West Coast expansion, modern, innovative, and designed to inspire creativity and collaboration. The team he had assembled over the past months reflected his commitment to finding people with both talent and character. Among his hires was Elena Rodriguez, a brilliant software engineer who had been overlooked by other companies because she had taken time off to care for her aging mother. There was also David Kim, a marketing specialist who had left a high-paying job at a major corporation because he wanted to work for a company that aligned with his values. "The quarterly numbers just came in," Elena announced as she entered the conference room with a tablet full of data. "We exceeded our revenue targets by 32%. Marcus smiled, but he was more interested in the other metrics they tracked. "What about employee satisfaction scores?" "Highest in the company," David replied. "And we've had 0 turnover since we opened." These were the numbers that mattered most to Marcus. He had learned from Sarah that sustainable success came from creating an environment where people could do their best work while maintaining their personal values and priorities. The success of TechVision West had not gone unnoticed in the industry. Marcus regularly received speaking invitations, interview requests, and offers from other companies. Forbes had recently featured him in an article about young business leaders, calling him the executive who proves that emotional intelligence is just as important as technical skills. Despite the recognition, Marcus remained focused on the work itself. Every decision he made, he filtered through the same lens Sarah had taught him to use. What was right for the employees, the clients, and the long-term health of the company? This approach was tested when TechVision West received an offer to be acquired by a major technology conglomerate. The offer was substantial enough to make Marcus and every employee of the West Coast division wealthy beyond their dreams. "It's an incredible offer," Marcus told Sarah during their weekly video call. "But I'm concerned about what would happen to our team under their management." Sarah listened as Marcus outlined his reservations about the acquiring company's culture and track record with employee relations. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked, echoing the question she had posed many times before. "That this would be a betrayal of everything we've built here," Marcus replied without hesitation. "Then you have your answer," Sarah said. "The money will always be there. Opportunities to build something meaningful are much rarer." Marcus's recommendation to decline the acquisition offer surprised many people, including some of TechVision's board members. But Sarah supported his decision completely, and the board ultimately agreed to focus on organic growth rather than a quick exit. The decision proved prescient when the acquiring company was later embroiled in a scandal involving worker exploitation at their overseas facilities. Marcus's team remained intact and motivated, and TechVision West continued to grow at a sustainable pace. As the one-year anniversary of the San Francisco office approached, Marcus found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. His parents had moved to the Bay Area and were thriving in their new environment. His father's health had improved significantly, and his mother had started selling her paintings to local galleries. More importantly, Marcus had found a way to honor both his family values and his professional ambitions. He regularly flew back to visit the main TechVision office, maintaining his close working relationship with Sarah while building his own leadership style. The night before the anniversary celebration, Marcus received an unexpected phone call from Jake, his former colleague at the Golden Oak restaurant. "I saw the Forbes article," Jake said. "Man, I can't believe you went from bartending to running a tech company in less than 2 years." "It doesn't feel like 2 years," Marcus replied. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like it all happened yesterday." "Are you happy?" Jake asked. "I mean, really happy? Not just successful?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I think I'm becoming the person I was meant to be," he said finally. "And yes, that makes me very happy." The anniversary celebration was attended by clients, employees, and partners from throughout the tech industry. Sarah flew in from the main office, bringing with her news that would change Marcus's life once again. "The board has made a decision," she told him privately before the main event. "They want to promote you to Chief Operating Officer of the entire company. You'd be moving back to oversee all operations, with TechVision West becoming just one part of your responsibilities." Marcus felt the familiar sensation of his world shifting, but this time it was accompanied by confidence rather than uncertainty. "What about TechVision West? I don't want to abandon what we've built here." "You wouldn't be abandoning it," Sarah assured him. "You'd be scaling it. The leadership principles and culture you've established here would become the model for all our operations." The offer represented the culmination of everything Marcus had worked toward since that night he drove Sarah home. From restaurant worker to COO of a major corporation in less than 2 years was a transformation that still seemed impossible, even as he was living it. But more than the title or the salary, what excited Marcus was the opportunity to influence how business could be conducted ethically and successfully. He could help create a model that other companies might follow, proving that treating people well wasn't just morally right, but also financially smart. During the celebration, Marcus gave a speech to the assembled guests about the importance of building companies that served all stakeholders, not just shareholders. He talked about the responsibility that came with success and the obligation to use influence for positive change. 2 years ago, I was working in a restaurant, believing that my dreams of business success were behind me, he told the audience. I learned that dreams don't have expiration dates. They just wait for the right moment and the right opportunities to come alive. After the event, as Marcus and Sarah walked along the San Francisco waterfront, she asked him a question that had become a tradition between them. Any regrets? Marcus looked out at the bay, thinking about the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. Only one, he said. I regret that it took a crisis in my family to teach me what really matters in life. But maybe that's how the most important lessons always come, through experience rather than instruction. Sarah smiled. And what's the most important lesson? That success isn't about what you achieve, Marcus replied. It's about who you become while achieving it, and whether you use your success to create opportunities for others. As they walked back toward the office building where Marcus's career transformation had truly begun, both of them understood that this was not an ending, but a new beginning. Marcus had evolved from someone who served others to someone who served a larger purpose, and his story was inspiring others to believe that their own transformations were possible. The young man who had offered to drive a stranger home after a corporate party had become a leader whose influence extended far beyond any single company or industry, and the CEO who had recognized potential in an unlikely place had found not just an exceptional employee, but a true partner in building something meaningful. Their story had become proof that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the simplest acts of human kindness, and that the right conversation at the right moment can indeed change everything.